Good morning, everyone, and welcome to KETIV's Autodesk Virtual Academy, your once-a-week learning experience for all Autodesk products. I'm Nigel Mbayek, and today we're joined by a special guest from Autodesk, Paul Norman. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, everybody.
And today we're going to be going over a great session, Inventor Guided Tutorials. Guided tutorials are as they sound. Essentially what they are is it's a learning tool within the program for you to run through tutorials created by other users of the product. You can run through these tutorials and learn new functionality in the tool or even enhancements to already existing functionality. So now I'm going to pass it on to Paul Norman.
Okay. I'm one of the principal content developers over at Autodesk for Inventor, and I've been involved with the guided tutorial project since its inception. So it's been around for quite a while, although it's been evolving. So we introduced the guided tutorial concept back in about 2012, so about 5 years ago. And it was because people opened Inventor and they didn't even know where to start. And if you don't have the benefit of a local community college or reseller training or anything, if you're kind of isolated, then how do you learn Inventor on your own? Of course, there's always YouTube and things like that. But so we introduced this concept that we tried to make it so that you can, go off in the weeds and recover gracefully, just like you had an instructor there. So you can see what makes them unique. Well, it's visual in that there's a video as part of it. It's auditory, so you can add sound to your video if you like. It's not required, but it does support that. There's a side panel with the text, so the video typically matches what you put in the text panel. So if you're showing them in the video, you can repeat that same thing in the text in a different way in the panel. And then what we do is we ask them to do after. So it's kind of divided up into, the overall tutorial is a series of tasks. Each task has a number of steps involved. And so the kind of secret ingredient to all of this is that the author creates a file for each task. So if I want them to start in task 1 with nothing on the screen, okay, so the first file that they see is an empty file when we ask them to start a sketch or do something, and then they click ahead to task 2, and the file that it opens assumes that they successfully created what we asked them to do in task 1. So in other words, they can go back and forth and back and forth. So if they missed something, they can recover gracefully, or they can experiment if they want to. So there's also some things that we built in. There's always help. You can search for help in our help system, but you can also, in the guided tutorial gallery, search for text strings. So I'll show you that in a second. So if I typed in, like for instance, I'll show you in a second, I'll type in fold for sheet metal command and see what it comes up with for a tutorial. You can also start anywhere. So let me just show you kind of an example of what an old style tutorial looks like, or a traditional, I should say. This is on our website for the trial version of Inventor. And it's basically, if you click in here, what you'll see is, before you begin, download a PDF file. So there's your text file. It's outside of the product. It's a separate document or a different screen. And then you've got these videos down here. This one's 7 minutes long. And in this particular tutorial, you start with nothing and you start building. And so if you go off in the weeds and you get lost somewhere, there's no way to recover gracefully. And I'm not putting it down. This is the way that tutorials are typically created in many cases today. We used to do that on our help site, where you read on the help web page, download this data set, and here's your help web page, and follow these steps if you can. So that's kind of why we started doing this, is it's kind of a different way of approaching learning, and it makes it kind of fun. And actually, there's one of our employees at Autodesk teaches at the local community college, and he has his students test these out and write reports on them. And they actually said it was fun, and they could, recover gracefully. And in fact, with the concept of constraints, which is kind of a difficult concept for both sketching and assemblies, they were able to learn from the tutorial what Phil was not able to do in his class, and that, because they could try it out, go back and forth and see what's going on and experiment, and so they actually had fun doing it, which is, learning. When you make learning fun, that's a plus. So in 2017, we introduced what you see on the right-hand side here, which is the gallery. In 2016 and previous releases of Inventor, going back to, I think, 2012, we had this whole guided tutorial concept, but it was, a lot of people didn't discover it. There was a download site where you downloaded an executable, and then the gallery was really tiny. So we put a lot of effort into designing this, and it follows the screencast model. And what you're seeing on this display is a live gallery, which when you click on the available tutorials, it's showing you what's available on the screencast website. So screencast server hosts our tutorials. So if you see one that you like, you can mouse over it and it'll tell you what it is, then you download it and run it. There's also inside of Inventor, let me go ahead and see what this looks. So yeah, so let me just kind of show you what we've got going here. And one of the reasons I'm doing this webcast is a lot of people, especially our experienced users, never get past here. They go to home or wherever and they start a new file, and they never, ever, ever click the Get Started tab, and they never notice this new tutorial thing. So the learning path tutorials are guided tutorials. They ship with Inventor in the box, so when you install it, there's an overview video, and then if you click down in here, there's a series of an overview video of what are sketches, and then 3 tutorials to do for sketches, then the next. So you can kind of go through a learning path on your own to get started without downloading anything. So what you see here in the tutorial gallery, though, is a live feed of what's available today, and it's always being updated. So, for instance, if you click on the sort by recently added, you'll see that there was one released recently on iLogic. This is our very first community-created tutorial. A guy named Steve Olson down in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh somewhere, he created this and posted it. So he used our new creator author tool to create and post this to the public gallery. So let me kind of just jump in here a little bit about these guided tutorials. When you click on one, you can actually, let me mouse over it first. So you see what the tutorial is about before you download it, and then if you've downloaded it, it tells you that you already have it installed. They also track progress, and you can start anywhere. In other words, if you did something like this, and I'll show you the search. So I want to look and see if there's any tutorials out there on the web that cover the fold command. And here's a sheet metal T tutorial where we cover the fold command. Something more generic like extrude. It'll search the tutorials and see which tutorials use the extrude command. So what we're actually doing is we're searching the title and the description for each task. So I'm not sure that we're searching the body of the text. I'll have to do some testing on that. But if you put, you don't have to like create some special keyword or anything. If you just put it in the title or the task description, this will give you a hit if you create your own tutorial. So you don't have to create tutorials for the public gallery. You can create them for private sharing. So if you wanted to enforce your own drafting standards or modeling standards, this is a great way to do that. You create them for internal use and share them privately. So let me go in here. There's also, let me kill this keyword. I want to, before I forget, point out that these have some ingredients, and I mentioned them earlier. So they'll typically consist of text, video, and a data file that supports it. But in this case, we released the 3D PDF format, and we sent a template along that says, if you want to export your PDF file to 3D formats, here's a template for you to use. But a lot of our customers were having trouble editing an Adobe PDF file. So this is really, I added a data file because this is what I'm using to export the 3D PDF, but this data file isn't actually required for this tutorial. The tutorial is actually a series of videos. So in this case, a guided tutorial is a video playlist, and I added a supporting data file. If they want to reproduce the results that I did in the video, then they have a data set to work with that matches exactly what I did in the video. But in this case, this is a video playlist that they can go through and just match the video with the data set that was provided. Also, if you say play a tutorial, Okay, so what you see here is play, edit, duplicate, delete. So I'm the author of this tutorial, so I can edit it at any time. Once it's published, I have to unshare it and then make my edits and then reshare it. If you say duplicate, you can see any tutorials that are posted out there, and if you click the duplicate button, you can basically take that tutorial and edit it and make it your own. So if you see something that we've done that you like, and it's similar to what you would like to, show to your users, then you can just duplicate that tutorial, and now you have edit rights. You can change it, you can modify it, and republish it privately or publicly, however you want. And of course, delete is to remove the tutorial. So when I said that you can jump in anywhere, here. So let's say that I'm running this tutorial here. And in this case, I'm starting them with a blank screen. And they go on, they finish the tasks, and so you can see what's happening here is that it loads up the next task. So this is assuming that they successfully completed what I asked them to do in task 1, and then they on and on and on. So they can go down here and they can skip ahead. You can see here, this uses the revolve command, this adds holes and fillets, so you can see that what you want to learn, so you can, like I said, jump in anywhere and resume anywhere. I want to learn about holes and fillets, so I go in here, and I can go just through the hole and fillet commands if I wanted to. So let me just show you here as well. You see these little lightning bolts. We're asking them to do some things here. Right-click and do this and do that. So you see the little arrows pointing up. That's all part of the tutorial creator that you as the author can say, I want to ask them to do this command. Now, one of the interesting things about these command markers is if I ask them to do something and it's in a different menu, you can see as I move my mouse back and forth to these items that the ribbon actually changes. So it finds where that command is located and takes them to the right place. Now, the user can't click here to start the command because we want to build that muscle memory to go here and click it. So in that case, we don't want to make it too easy for them. We want them to learn where the commands are located. Okay, so I'm going to go into the authoring part of the tutorials now. So if you haven't seen a tutorial in action, I just recommend that you go to the gallery and try some of these out, download them and experiment, duplicate them. Because in 2017.3, we opened up the authoring tool to everybody. And I don't want to really call it a wizard because in my mind, a wizard is pretty regimented. You have to do this, then you do this, then you do this in a very linear fashion, whereas the tutorial authoring process is not necessarily linear. There are certain ingredients that you need, but you don't have to do them in any particular order, and not everything is required. Like I just showed you a video for the PDF edit. That's just a video gallery. So if you want to create a series of videos for your learners, then you don't have to have any task files. Or if you just want to do task files in those videos, you can do that too. You do have to have at least one video or one task file in a tutorial in order to publish it, though. So you can't publish an empty tutorial. So there's reasons you want to create one for yourself. Enforce your standards and best practices. You can clone or duplicate any tutorial. There are some issues that we've kind of discovered since we released this. There are some video size limits. J.D. Mather, I don't know if J.D.'s on the phone, but he discovered that we don't support really, really, really big video files. His video file was about 100 megabytes, which is pretty large. And when we created this, we really thought, a task file is not going to be very long because we want, the sweet spot for anybody that creates learning videos is about 3 minutes or less, and a task file shouldn't be very big if you follow that rule. And my rule of thumb is 177, so I aim for, this isn't hard and fast, but my guide is create a task file that's about 1 minute long. I've pushed that to 1.5. You're getting to 2 minutes long. That's pretty long for a task file. You might want to consider splitting that task into 2 tasks. And then, to keep it short and sweet, 1 minute video, 7 tasks, and no more than 7 steps in each task. And that's just, like I said, a rule of thumb. It's not a hard and fast guide. It's just something to shoot for to make the learning process, get in anywhere, find it. Like if you have 25 tasks in a tutorial, that's a pretty large tutorial, and it would take a long time to get through. We try to make these fairly short, so people are busy, and yes, they can get in anywhere and get out quickly, but you don't want to throw too much at them at once, so consider breaking them into smaller steps and smaller tasks. And also what we have is there's also a help system. Okay, so on our help 2017 help page, we actually have a guided tutorial tips page, and it tells you how to unshare. And one thing I want to stress is that if you create a tutorial and you share it public, as soon as you hit share and it finishes processing, everyone in the world can see it. So you probably want to share it privately while you're practicing, send it to yourself or send it to somebody within your environment to test it out before you share it publicly, because like I said, when you hit share public and push that button, it goes live. And we're continually updating this page as we gather more information. So what I'd like to do now is talk about creating one. So as a rule, you really should script out the workflow. Anybody that's created training materials knows this is true. You don't just start in anywhere and start randomly, creating text and creating videos. And I also create my videos last. And again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but as the tutorial evolves, if you create your videos first, you'll discover things as you're writing down the workflow or something that you might change, and then it means you need to re-record your video. The videos that we require are WebM format, and unfortunately a lot of people use Camtasia and it doesn't support WebM. There are converters out there, but if you use Screencasts, the Autodesk video recorder tool, you can actually produce a native WebM file there. So if I forget, I'll try to show you that there's some tips on how to create screencast videos built into the software as well. When I say forward create workflow, what I mean by that is when I used to create these tutorials, I would create a task 1 data set, I'd create a task 2 data set, I'd create a task 3 data set ahead of time, and then I'd attach them to the tutorial. And what I've found in doing a lot of these is the forward create workflow works best. In other words, start with your very first task file, and then as it evolves, you work through the steps, and then when you get to the end of the steps for task 1, you say save those changes for task 2. So you don't save it for task 1, otherwise you'd overwrite everything. But the forward create workflow means you do the steps, then you push it to the next task. Do the steps, and then push it to the next task. And as I mentioned earlier, you can use the video as a playlist. So let me jump in here to a create mode. Okay, so what I have on the screen here is my very first start file, and I named it start file. But what happens when you create a tutorial, it actually will rename the file to tutorial file. So you can see right here I'm in start file.ipt. I'm going to click my Get Started tab and click on Tutorials. And then I'm going to click Create Tutorial. So on this page, we built, you as the author, this is what you do, and this is what the learner sees. And so here's the basic ingredients over here on the anatomy. And then how to create a tutorial, I've actually embedded a video here that shows you step-by-step best practices on how to create them. And then I also created a video if you've never used Screencast or you're unfamiliar with what the steps would be to create one, download the WebM, and so on. I created a help video here. And what you'll probably see in 2018 is a link to that help page down here, not in 2017-3 yet. So to begin, I'm just going to give it a name. And so you see here there's a cat area and then this about area. So the about is pretty important. This is about this tutorial. So what you see is, let me go ahead and add an image here. So there's my thumbnail. Now, I also described in the how-to video that these thumbnails are best suited to be 272 pixels by 170 pixels. Gives it a nice size. And then you can see as I mouse over this, this is what the user will see in the gallery. So as they mouse over, this text appears here. So, and then if you want to replace or delete your image, you can do that as well. So now I'm going to go back to the task. Oh, actually, down here, I don't want to forget this. What is it, novice, intermediate, or advanced, and what's the topic that you want to talk about? So that all is about. Now I go back to task, and this is where I create the meat of this tutorial. So what am I going to do in task 1? And this is what I was talking about in that search area. This is really important to what you put in the tasks, because whatever you put in here, like extrude or fold or that's what's going to get a hit. Okay, so now I'm going to add a step. We automatically number it. Now, what I typically do is I'll create a Word document, and I'll just typically copy and paste, and that makes it really easy. So what I want to do for this task description here, I don't want to do that. I want this. So let's sketch the first shape. And then I want to do this here. So copy and paste. I can stretch that down a little bit. So what I'm asking them to do is start a new sketch in the XY plane or XE plane. And this is where I go down, and at the end, I'll typically go through, add all my tasks, add all my steps to the task, and then go back last and add this video. So we also want a data file to go along with this. So I have a file open, start file. Okay, so that's my only active file, or I can browse it, browse to get it. Oops, let me see this here. Copy active file. And now you see a little blue border around this tutorial file.ipt. So what that means is I just took this start file, and I'm going to close it now because I've just attached that to this task. So it's ready to go. So I want them to start on, so this little guy here is add a highlight, or command highlighter is what we call them. So what I want to do is XE plane, and I want to do something else on here. So add another task or step. So adding a command highlight. So I want them to use the new sketch command, and I want them to start on the XE plane. So let's go here, and I just click here, and it just grabbed our internal name for that. And so now you see, and you can test the tutorial as you create it. So is that working properly? Yes, it is. So I also want them to start on the XE plane. So in this case, I want to go in here, I'm going to expand this out, and there's the XE plane. So I'm going to add another marker. So there's my existing one, which I can trash if I want, but I want to do the XE plane as well. So now I've got two highlights for one command. So one is the browser highlight, one is a ribbon highlight. Then I go on and on. So, and what I meant about the forward create workflow here is what, so the first thing I want them to do is revolve the shape, go full, oops, wrong one. Extrude this, both sides, millimeters, and then I'm going to revolve, oops, share the sketch. So this is something that I would add in to all of my text, what I want them to do. I'll revolve the shape, axis is here, my axis. And okay, and so then I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, and that's the state that I want them to be in for task 2. So this is where I say send the file edits to task 2. Okay, so there's task 2, there's task 1, so on and on. So now task 2, I want them to do certain things. So task 2, in this task, and these are the keywords, if you will. Extrude the shape and project the edges, and then I want them to start the extrude command. I'll just copy my text, and I'll add a command highlighter. The extrude command for a novice is right there. Then I'll do whatever I need to do, and then send the file edits to task 3. So let's say that in way back in task 1, now this is where it gets a little tricky if you start making edits to your task files. So let's say that I started this in metric, and I really meant to start this in millimeters or inches. So I go to my tools, document settings, and I want to say the units in this start file needs to be inches. So this data set has already been saved with millimeters. So what I'm going to do is click this refresh button, and that's your save button. So saves are disabled for the learners. They can do a save copy as on the tutorial files. But especially as an author, you don't want to do a save here. What you do want to do is do a refresh. And so that just saved your changes for that task. And so if that was a basic thing, and I've already gone through a whole bunch of task files with data sets, then I would probably have to do the same thing here as well. I want to go to document settings and set my metric to inches. And again, refresh. So, the forward create workflow is great, but that's one of the important things about working out your script and your workflow ahead of time. There's a lot less back and forth editing to do if you do that. But like I said, save. Then of course there's delete, edit, and so on. And that pretty much wraps up what the basics are. So when you finish, you can click share here, or if you go out to here, and let's call it here. My tutorials is the ones I'm creating. And then shared with me are the ones that show up shared privately with you, if you haven't seen that yet. Most recent. There's my blue one here. So this is a brand new tutorial, and I can click share here as well. So in the share in public, if I click this now, you're going to see it live. I'm not going to do that. You click share privately, and then you add your email addresses or Autodesk 360 ID, and then click share. And then it shows up in their shared with me area of the tutorial gallery. But I'm just going to go ahead and cancel out of that without doing anything. And like I said, about this point, we can open it up for questions.
All right then. Thank you, Paul. Looks like we have a couple of questions here. This first one comes from Eric, and it's regards to the arrows to note what section you are in the tutorial, or like what to click. If you undock your browser, or have your browser undocked, your model browser, where do those arrows go?
I'm not sure exactly where that would go. It still shows up.
Okay, so it moves with it.
Yeah. I've never tried that before. I'm glad it works.
It looks like Roger asks, does this add-on program, or does using add-on programs affect this process in any way? Say, for example, you're using something like HSM.
You mean, okay, something that runs inside of Inventor. There are some things that are limitations, but I've tested it with HSM and it works fine. So typical add-ons like our Nastran, if it runs inside of Inventor, it typically works, but the one thing that doesn't work well is browser pointers. So those browser arrows that you see here, in an add-in like HSM or even like simulation and things like that, if it uses a special browser, we don't get to point to those, but we do point to the commands. So the ribbons all work, but the browser doesn't work very well with add-ins yet, and that's something that's on our list to fix.
Great. So just to clarify for anyone who didn't understand what that is, when you're using things on top of Inventor, like Nastran and CAD, HSM, or some of those other products, I'm guessing also the same would apply for things like third-party add-ins as well. Things like that, yeah, not necessarily going to be perfect.
Yeah, but if we can get the command ID, the ribbon pointers all work. It's mainly the browser that's kind of an issue.
Right. All right then. And then Let's see, this question here comes from Joe, and Joe's asking any plans for future improvement for the guided tutorials, or what's next, I guess.
I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, we have a lot of things that we'd like to do, and we'd love to put it out to the community to, if you see these, use these, send us direct feedback or post an idea on the idea station for improvements, because we're definitely driven by you guys' suggestions. So there's a number of things that we'd like to do. In fact, I was the author of the Learning Path, and the Learning Path is pretty much hard-coded. And if you wanted to create your own learning path, you can't leverage what we did and make your own out of it. So that's one of the things we'd really like to do, is do some sort of I want to assemble my own learning path and drag and drop these tutorials in so that our learners have a special learning path that we set up. So that's definitely on our radar. But yeah, any ideas you come up with for improvements or suggestions, that's great. We'd love to hear it.
Well, I do have a lot of customers that I do talk to on the phone that are like either my Lifeline customers or just other people in general that I've talked to about their learning experience. And a lot of companies, I'm sure a lot of people on the call can relate, do have very specific ways that they want you to, document your files, certain ways they want you to manage your files, create drawings and everything. Mainly drawings is what I see. And I think that this tool, guided tutorials, can be leveraged a lot in that workflow, especially if there's very specific things that your company does that you might want to teach a new team member, or just make sure that everything's consistent across the board. Something like this is definitely very valuable in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Along that same note, next Thursday's AVA is going to be on Fusion Team and BIM 360 Team, kind of rebranded A360. So if you are familiar with A360, it is the same tool, almost exactly. They just rebranded it to switch between to denote between the manufacturing and AEC side of things. It's another data management tool. So if maybe your team is not ready for something like Vault, so going full into Vault, but you still have data to manage, and you're doing it on like a shared network drive, or even sharing things in Dropbox, Box, etc. Fusion Team and BIM 360 Team are products built by the Autodesk team that are optimized for your CAD data. One of the biggest things is maintaining your file links between assemblies, parts, external references, and things like that. And BIM 360 and Fusion Team do take care of that for you. So if you are interested in seeing that, definitely stay tuned next week for that session. Looks like we don't have any more questions, but we've got a lot of thank yous here in the question. We got a lot of thank yous here in the question chats. So definitely, Paul, thank you again for being here today. Definitely our pleasure, and enjoy the weather up there in Portland.